Imagine a faraway place, Hank, where people value your opinion. Now go there. Welcome in to the Bro Force Squad podcast, where we are just a bunch of bros drinking beer and talking movies. I am your host, the Mayor, Jeff Hornacek. Thank you guys so much for checking us out for the movie discussion tonight. And what better partner in crime could I have? Actually, not in crime, because you are a lawyer with me. That is our legal
crime, then.
I was going to say, lawyers have broken the law before. So
do you want a criminal lawyer or do you want a criminal lawyer?
Whoa. Damn. That is our legal counsel, Ronnie Cycli. Now, Ronnie, we're going to be discussing this movie at length tonight. So let me lead off with a legal question revolving around Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin. So in the film, after the fateful accident at the Wayne Enterprises lab in South America that sadly resulted in several deaths, who is ultimately liable for that in the court of law?
Joel Schumacher actually is, and it's actually because he apologized for the film. And this is a good thing to know for everyone listening out there. Don't ever utter the word sorry, because you're immediately liable. So whether or not Joel Schumacher was involved in the actual act of the deaths in South America, you know, he apologized for the entire movie. So he took responsibility immediately.
That's still one of my favorite things ever in Hollywood. Before the movie comes out, a director, and maybe rest in peace, Joel Schumacher, because to be that honest with fans and apologize before we've seen the film, honestly, as a marketing gimmick, you're like, well, what the fuck is this? Now I have to go see it.
Do you think he's on the cutting room floor and he's like, oh my God, we can't put this out? And the studio's like, you're putting it out. He's like, we've made a huge mistake.
It would be like a guy, like someone puts a document through a shredder and they're like, can you tape this back together? And like 5 minutes in, you're just like, this is impossible. I can't fix anything here.
I think we might be a pod that's talked about Batman and Robin more than any podcast.
Yeah. Speaking of which, please go back and check out, I believe it was like the second piece of content we ever did about 5.5 years ago was our Batman and Robin movie commentary. And Boehner edited it together to where before even our theme song comes in, it is the Joel Schumacher quote of him apologizing. He's like, if anyone out there saw Batman and Robin and was disappointed in any way.
George Lucas would never, you know.
Yeah, George Lucas like, just fucking you need to double down is what you need to do.
We need Kathleen Kennedy or someone. We needed some apologies in other fandoms, okay? Like at least Schumacher like owned it.
I wish the Batman and Robin fan community was as ravenous as the Star Wars community.
No, they're a polite community because of Joel Schumacher.
Yeah, it's hardened them. All right, well, if you did not listen to our show before, or even if you have, we start every episode off with the most important thing in any bro's life, and that is Chest Day. Our Chest Day topic today is the fourth of a segment we've ever done called In Defense of Villains, where we analyze the perspective of a villain in a respected movie franchise, and we defend them. We do our best, especially with Ronnie being very familiar with the court of law as a lawyer, to dig in and pretend that we are representing this specific villain. We give you their perspective, and we explain how the events of the film really should be viewed through their lens. Now, today, if you could see at the top of the title for this episode, we are doing Mr. Freeze from Batman and Robin. But Ronnie, I think it bears mentioning before we actually dive in, because you brought this up off pod. This could really serve, and I would be happy to do this at a later date for any of the other Batman villains, but the same methodology we're going to use to defend Mr. Freeze in the 1997 film Batman and Robin, I think is applicable to many of the villains in Batman's rogues gallery that he has come across in his films.
I think it's fun to break down Batman as a superhero and what he symbolizes. And it's really, especially the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight Rises really built into this. The idea like you're watching the movie and being like, wait, I'm on the side of the rich billionaire the whole time.
Who's kicking the shit out of like street criminals.
Yeah, so I think Batman's a fascinating subject that like, you know, that we don't get in the Marvel universe, right? Like it's very different, the DC universe of Batman. You know, while you do understand like, okay, he's just like, he does good for his society and community. It's actually really easy to be like, dude, that guy's a dick. And he could easily add funds into the community to defeat the what's happening in Gotham. right? So like Batman inherently, like, does he need to suit up and put all this money into becoming Batman, or can he just divert those funds? And I think that's a fun subject to look at. Like, we could have a whole episode on just Batman himself.
That'd be very true. Yeah, could he do more good if he solely focused on using Wayne Enterprises as a means to fix or right the wrongs of Gotham?
Well, we talk about this all the time in with comic books and superheroes. Is for every reaction there's a counter reaction, right? So like becoming a superhero causes there to become villains of
Correct.
an equal force. And so the theory is if you don't become that powerful, then you don't have that counterbalance, that mirror villain coming after you. So when you have like Christopher Nolan did it the best. Like when Joker came on, like they really broke that down into saying that Batman has caused the villains to advance, not the other way around.
But not in this case, not the script of the film
Yeah.
to advance as well. So it bears noting, for the sake of this argument in defense of villains, we're only going to focus on Mr. Freeze in the 1997 movie Batman and Robin, although there may be some slight allusions to other things that happen in other Batman movies. But the case we're going to build is solely for Mr. Freeze in that film. Now, before we can do that, I think for those that haven't either seen the movie, again, we're going to spoil it for you, but it's Batman and Robin. So, like,
if you've made it this long without seeing Batman and Robin, can I just say you're good?
Yeah.
Don't do it.
I'm jealous. You haven't had to sit through it.
Or do it and listen to the commentary.
It's the only way to watch it. Yeah. But I think first, just to, in the instance of transparency cycling, we should go through I have 4 bullet points here that really emphasize why on a first watch you would say, no, unequivocally, Mr. Freeze is a dick. He is the villain in this movie. Just to be real with our listeners, right? So here's a few things I had, and I would love to get your point of view, just objectively on these. So first off, there's no denying one of the reasons you might interpret Mr. Freeze as the villain of Batman and Robin is because he holds Gotham City hostage, killing hundreds of innocent people in an attempt to steal diamonds.
Hey, that's bad. See, now I'm lost.
Yeah, it's tough to spin that as a negative thing.
But we'll try. That's what we do.
He also seems to have really no respect for anything in museums or like artifacts. So if you're like a collector out there, that you might be like, this guy just is fucking a bull in a china shop.
It says do not touch. He's going to touch.
Yeah. Also, he makes a pretty bold proclamation that the Ice Age definitively killed the dinosaurs, which, there's evidence pointing towards it and against it, but that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, I have to say.
Yeah, just say in theory.
Right.
Just preface it.
Especially as a scientist. Speaking of ice... another reason you might view him as the villain cycling is because he attempts to plunge Gotham into an eternal second ice age at the end of the film.
Again, that's bad. The Earth is warming. He's just trying to help.
Who hasn't done that?
I mean, we're going to get into this. I'm already starting.
I will say, yeah, he had a lot more, he was a lot more ambitious with that fucking telescope than anyone else at Wayne Enterprises was.
Look, when I go to bed, I want it a little cooler. I'm just going to tell you. Like, if I'm hot, I can't fall asleep. I'd appreciate that a little bit.
That's true. It could actually save us some money on our AC bill. A third thing, so he joins up with Poison Ivy and Bane, obviously, in an attempt to sort of tear Batman and Robin apart. And, you just got to say, as far as relationships go, he betrays Poison Ivy and Bane towards the end. I guess they both kind of betray each other. Maybe her more so than him. Actually, fuck it. The more I look at this, she betrayed him.
She did.
Yeah. Never mind. Scratch that off. Only 3 things he did wrong. The last thing I had here is just really, I think, a poor thing to tell young, very impressionable people working under him. And that's in the opening scene where Batman and Robin go to stop him in the heist at the museum. He instructs his goons to, quote, destroy everything, end quote. How do you defend that, Cycly?
We're going to go right into it. It's easy to defend that, actually. The museum are not the rightful owners of those objects. You remember when we went to the British Museum in London? Nothing in there was British.
That's true. A lot of African artifacts.
Everything was from the Middle East,
I think
Africa,
Killmonger
Asia.
Killmonger.
These museums have profited off the backs of other countries and taken and stolen their properties. And of course, so who is he hurting in this situation? The elite
Shareholders, yeah.
shareholders, right? Like the invisible
Who
person.
fucking who?
Yeah. So you're gonna tell me I need to side with this museum that has like, oh, look at this thing from India from 5000 BC that we have for some reason in Gotham, and it's not in India. How did you get that, Gotham Museum? Please tell me.
It's a great question, yeah, because I don't think it was willingly given to you by indigenous people.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, well, let's dive right into our defense of Mr. Freeze as the villain. So
Starting off hot.
The first thing I have, I don't think we've seen someone with this resume cyclically since our Velocipaster commentary. By the way, great interview with our friend Brendan Steer, the director of that. But where a woman in the film is pre-med law. Because Mr. Freeze, according to the film, is a brilliant physicist whose literal only goal is to cure McGregor syndrome, which you're welcome, Alfred. We'll get to that in a second. But they also mention he's a 2-time Olympic decathlete who also won a Nobel Prize for molecular biology. This would be like LeBron James also like being a science whiz and curing diseases.
So I completely forgot this, and you and I are very sick people and have rewatched the film today. And when they said that in the movie, I was like, wait, what?
Like, why does he need to be an Olympic decathlete in the movie? Why does he need...
Who is writing the script like, no. The audience is not going to feel that Mr. Freeze was this ambitious, strong. We need to have him be an Olympian, too.
Yeah, they're not going to respect him enough if he hasn't... And a decathlon is fucking 10 events. He can't just be like a sprinter or a bodybuilder.
Yeah, no, of course. So is the subject there, like, are they trying to show his, like... They can't have a nerdy scientist battle Batman. Are they being like, oh, not only is he a smart guy, but he's athletic and strong? Is that really what they're trying to sell to us?
I guess. And this is sort of where, like, casting Arnold, I mean, there's a million things we could cite with that being an issue here. But one of them is, like, trying to cast the bodybuilder and then tell us that he's a molecular biologist. Like, in the cartoon show, the animated series, I think what works so well, Freeze is just a nerdy scientist.
Yeah,
like he never goes.
Just make it about his body armor, his machine that he wears. You know, like that's what makes him strong. Not his, athletic ability.
Right.
The Batman, the Arkham Knight video games. I think Freeze is a villain in the second one. Yeah. And basically, I think you have to kind of limit his suit's ability to subdue him. It has nothing to do with him as a person. It's all the suit.
Yeah, which is, I think, the more traditional sort of take on Mr. Freeze. Yeah, so again,
but it's not 90s with Arnold.
He's not inherently evil. I mean, his sole purpose is to cure McGregor syndrome, which Batman ends up directly benefiting from because he's already cured the stage of the disease that Alfred's in. So you're welcome. And again, respect our Olympians.
A thank you would be nice.
For real. All right, my second point. So the real thing that Batman kind of gets up in his fucking grill about is that he keeps stealing diamonds, which, first off, Encycli, you, I think, highlighted this perfectly off the top. Victimless crime. Right. He's not going to like a pawn shop or a small business owner taking them. He's going to the elite of the elite museums when Wayne Enterprises hosts the fundraiser from people that have more than enough money to spare. He's stealing.
They are bidding hundreds of thousands of dollars on women.
Yes. It's disgusting.
These are the people we feel bad for.
And I think more importantly, why is he stealing the diamonds? To keep himself alive.
Yeah.
They power his cryo suit.
What does a diamond do other than look good? Like, he's using it for a purpose. And the only victim, like you said, is like one of these diamond companies like De Beers or whatever, who profit, who hoard diamonds in their vaults and keep inventory low to keep the price high on these diamonds. You know, I'm just saying.
God forbid
these are the true villains.
We ask how they procured them, right? I mean, Blood Diamond after Blood Diamond is probably in this movie.
They didn't go to Brilliant Earth.
Definitely not.
They went to the source.
Right. So again, I just thought of this connection, but is this basically a modern day Les Miserables? He is Jean Valjean stealing to survive.
Joel Schumacher is probably like, there's a tear in his grave of joy that like you just made a comparison to Les Miserables.
Thank you.
From Batman.
You got what I was going
You get
for.
it. He's like, that's literally your only thing I was hoping.
Yeah,
Someone
the
audience member.
diamond's sole purpose is to keep him alive through his cryosuit. He's not stealing
It's not his
them.
fault that that's what it takes.
I don't think he's for profit either. Like, I don't think he takes more diamonds than he needs to keep himself alive, you know?
Like it's inconvenient it's a diamond. Like it would have been great if it's something cheaper or whatever. Like you think he wanted it to be the most expensive substance on Earth, right?
We
like,
would have loved if human piss could power his cryosuit.
Yeah.
Not the way it's built.
He didn't get a choice.
Correct. Odd that that's what powers it, but again, it is what it is.
Hey, I'm not questioning the world they live in. We just have to deal with the results.
Why would you? Shit's airtight. It's a fool's errand. Another thing, so he basically brings Bruce and Dick together by exposing the flaws in their relationship, something that Alfred was really too close to them to ever do. And I know some people at home might say, well, I think Poison Ivy did that. But the real jumping off point for their lack of trust among one another comes from the opening set piece where Dick lunges out at Mr. Freeze and gets frozen, and they start to realize, you know what, we don't trust each other. And then really comes to a head when they're chasing him and Bruce shuts down Robin's motorcycle on the statue. So he really helped these two come together as a team.
He was having them ask questions that they didn't want to ask out loud.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these issues had been around since Batman Forever. But it was the elephant in the room. No one wanted to bring it up.
Right.
And Alfred saw it. You know, Alfred was aware, but you know, McGregor syndrome was starting to get to him. You know, and he's
too close to the situation to really be the one mediating, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you need to hit rock bottom. Sometimes you need that person to come into your life that like slaps you to make you realize what you have and what you don't have. And Bruce and Robin were taking each other for granted. And I mean, to me, it was only because Mr. Freeze came into their life that they appreciated each other.
He could have killed Robin, but he froze him because he knew that would be a moment of clarity.
Let's be honest about that scene. He freezes Robin. He tells Batman, you have 11 minutes to save him. Mm-hmm. So one, he's literally providing instruction.
Correct.
He could have been like, you have 8 years to dethaw him, right? Like, he could have fucked with Batman. He was specific. I'm not trying to. 11 minutes. You take him, you know, says, after me. He says, you either come after me or save the boy. But immediately he creates a frozen ice wall, which means Batman couldn't chase after him.
Right. It's a Sophie's choice situation, and then he takes away the choice, really.
So Batman immediately only had the option to save Robin. Mr. Freeze made him save his own partner. He didn't kill Batman. He literally said, I'll kill you next time.
Which he doesn't even try next time, really, to kill.
Yeah. So what we're talking about here is the fact that he only stalled them. He purposely wanted Batman to save Robin. He didn't want to kill or harm Robin. Is that the actions of a good person? Or a bad person? I'm asking you.
A good person. And the conversation Batman and Robin have in the cave after that is probably the realest talk they've had on screen thus far in the movie and a half we've seen them to that point.
It needed to happen.
Right. They had to be put in that situation by someone else to have the real talk.
Isn't it funny, like, as a villain, you're like, why not kill them? If he was a true villain, truly evil, why would he not just finish them off?
Right. And I think his gang even knows when he says kill the heroes, he's speaking in jest. It's figurative.
Well, he's calling them heroes.
Correct. Yeah. Even then he's complimenting them. It's a great point.
Yeah. He's acknowledging their goodness. He's like, hey, they're just here to do a job, just like I am.
As are we. Now, God forbid we have a little fun and play a little hockey with the fucking diamond before we take it.
What if he's like, wait, you guys You guys didn't. We were just having fun. Oh, you took that seriously.
Yeah, I'm
No,
sorry.
no, no, no,
Something.
no.
I think when I speak in puns, a lot of things get lost in translation. Maybe I should be more direct going forward, but I won't. All right,
Because he's
the last thing that I had, and then obviously anything else you can think of or anything that this reminds you of, please bring up. But let's speak specifically about the gang that Mr. Freeze employs in this movie. I would say roughly 100 members of lost youth, and he basically teaches them to skate. And then on top of that, him being a former doctor, I can almost promise you these guys have a great medical plan with benefits that he's offering, which is something that not all employers provide. So I think first off, Mr. Freeze is getting these guys off the streets, keeping them from doing drugs and God knows what. And at least now they have a purpose. If you think about it, in effect, all of the people working for him are working to cure McGregor syndrome.
it's beautiful community, and you kind of mentioned this. Not only did he teach them to skate, he's teaching them to sing. He's
Yes.
teaching them to work together. And I mean that the whole like choir, that means to me when they show the choir scene, I'm like, there are activities inside this employment. Right? It's not
Camaraderie
like,
is
hey,
important to him. Like employee morale
yes.
matters to Mr. Freeze.
It's not just hey, they're there to do a job. He's like, no, no, no. I want you to be fully invested as I am. I want you to own this. So when you come in, you're working for me. I'm not going to ask you if you're willing to fight for me and die for me. Then I want you to enjoy your time, you know.
Right.
And I think that's beautiful. He could just hire goons, but if you're hiring a goon and they don't feel invested, are they really fighting that hard for you? Are they really, putting out
Right.
all of their effort, or are they
Where's
just
their sense
showing
of
up?
ownership in the work they're doing, you know?
Yeah, where's their equity?
Great point. Sweat equity is really what he's providing. Another thing too, Vanessa Williams gives him an opportunity to cheat on his
Thank
comatose
you.
wife, and he doesn't even entertain the offer.
She puts his butt right on him, and he's
Right.
like, "No, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm not that good of a person.
And
You're not that good of a
at
person."
that point, it had probably been years since he felt the touch of a woman. And a 10 comes up to you, grinding on you.
I've always loved like in this Batman universe. Sorry, we're going off. I'll go off on a little tangent here. In this Batman universe, the Joel Schumacher one specifically, where did he find these goons? Like even Poison Ivy. My favorite part of this movie was in the scene at the like fundraiser, and she interrupts
Yeah.
it, and people are bidding. And then all of a sudden she has these guys who like pick, like she falls. It's all completely choreographed. I'm like, where did she find these guys? And what was the rehearsals like? Like this wasn't just planned and it was like, hey, show up here. Then they had to rehearse. Like I like this.
And in Mr. Freeze's case, I guess probably all their cases, but he needs a very specific skill set. Like all those guys are very equipped to skate incredibly well. So he can't just pick up like, any thug off the street. Because if you can't skate that very first mission, number one, you'll be miserable, but two, you'll just be on your ass the whole time.
No. Have you ever tried? I'm a terrible skater. You can't just casually do that.
Because even if you go to a place that's not ice, he's going to make it ice in the first 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So, but like you said, to Freeze, the community, like his Glassdoor reviews for working for him, I think he would probably have like a 4.1, 4.2.
And it'd be brought down from like two people who were fired and they gave ones, but they were fired for very good reason.
And one guy interviewed and didn't get a call back, and so he wrote a shitty review. It's like, come on.
But like, they're acting like they're the victim. I'm like, dude, no. Like you clocked it. You had a friend clock in for you. And you showed up 3 hours late. Like you can't do that.
Time theft is not a joke to Mr. Freeze.
No, you can't take the merchandise home with you. It's just
if a pint of ice cream, once a month finds its way into your bag, that's fine. But doing something like that, stealing hours, it's just not
daily. Like the batteries, taking batteries home. Come on.
Yeah, come on, dude. It's just, first off, it's cheap. Like he pays you a livable wage. You don't need to do that.
And he's the kind of guy. If you just ask him for it, he understands. He steals diamonds. I'm like, hey man, I need batteries because my TV remote is just draining them. Can't turn them on. Mr. Freeze would be like, hey, I stole a diamond.
He would be so empathetic. He's like, I totally get it. These diamonds power my cryo suit for me to live. Take some AAAs. I'll turn the other cheek, Devin.
I
Fine.
I love that you found the deleted scene because that
Yeah.
is.
One guy comes up to him. He's like, "Look, I don't want to be that guy, but I actually don't like the claymation Jack Frost movie you make us watch 17 times a day.
It's like what?
This is news to who else feels this way?" A couple people are like, "Yeah, kind of."
I would love to see his HR meetings every day at like 3:30.
He has. Do you think he has a suggestion box that he lets them like, "Hey, if you think there's better ways for me to run the criminal operation, please." put
Yeah,
them here."
he has to.
Everyone wants to improve. He's not trying to just be stagnant, you know?
He's helping the economy too. I mean, again, if you're talking about 100 employees,
Oh,
like
yeah.
that's huge. That's
Yeah.
sustainable job growth.
Small businesses, backbone of the economy.
Absolutely. No, it's not.
All right, before we move on, I mean, I think we make a pretty definitive case for that Mr. Freeze is not the villain of Batman and Robin. If anything, it's Poison Ivy and Bane, and then obviously our own vanity and pride that Batman and Bruce and Dick Grayson exude. So, Cycly, if you had to sum up your argument, or what would your closing argument be as to why Victor Freeze is, in fact, not the antagonist of Batman and Robin?
I think it's easy to just focus on Freeze, be like, wow, he was willing to hurt other people to get his to succeed in his mission. I'm like, yeah, you're right. You know what? Did he go about it the best way? No. Look, I'll be the first person to tell you, he's not perfect. None of us are. We've all made mistakes. But his intent was pure, right? He was trying to save his wife. He loved his wife purely. And not only saving his wife, but that the cure for his wife would save others, a la Alfred, and, who knows who else. And so I think it's important to say, like, yeah, to sacrifice some to, like for the greater good is not inherently a positive thing, but you have to understand that he's coming from a place of passion. What would you do for your wife, your mother?
Right.
Would you let a few other people die to be able to save them and save others? And that's a debate for ethics. I'm not here to advocate one or the other, but can you really fault Mr. Freeze for sacrificing others to save the ones he loves? So, I think you could argue the villains in this movie, like we could do an episode on Poison Ivy and Bane if we really wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
and victimize them as well. But Mr. Freeze has intent, and that's everything, right? That to me is what is the motivation for his crimes, so-called crimes, and the motivation comes from a good place. And so I think that's everything.
Yeah, I mean, you could write this movie in another way where he is trying to keep himself alive and save his dying wife, because that's essentially what he's doing. Now, is there collateral damage when this happens? Absolutely, but we've seen in many superhero movies. In fact, the MCU has pretty much steered their narrative for probably a 3 or 4 film arc towards collateral damage that the Avengers caused. And this is, I think, on a much smaller scale, what's happening with Mr. Freeze. So again, do the ends justify the means? I think so in his case. I mean, the two things he's trying to accomplish in this film, keep himself and keep his wife alive. And if that's a crime, then I just have it all twisted.
Then we are the ones who are wrong.
Yeah, maybe that's who the real villain is, us. Because we just don't get it. All right, if you have any other ideas for villains that we should defend in movies, please send them our way. I believe this is our 4th segment of this. We've done
Cal from Titanic. We've done
Scar from The Lion King, and the Hawks
from Mighty Ducks.
From the Mighty Ducks. Yeah, so this is our
please, like, honestly, send if you have an idea, like if you have a villain that you think be hilarious to defend, or you just genuinely feel like they were misunderstood, let us know. Obviously, we're not talking about like Schindler's List here, guys. Like we're talking about, actual
don't send
misunderstood villains. Yeah, the bad guys in Schindler's List were really what?
And I have to say, I'm not going to lie to you. Like our levels of like the arguments, some are very much stronger than others, and I think the Cal from Titanic one is one of our better cases that we made.
I think Mr. Freeze and Cal are very, misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
Again, non-perfect people. We're not here to say like Cal or Mr. Freeze were
Yeah.
saints. They're not, but misunderstood.
Yes. Very well said. All right, moving on to our protein shake. That's where we go around and talk about what is in our cup, also known as what have we watched lately. Let's do a little back and forth. Cycly, why don't you go first? What have you seen since we last spoke?
We have a couple in common, I believe.
I believe we do.
So
Yes.
we should have that conversation here. So I'll start with one I know you haven't seen. I talked to you a little bit earlier. The wife and I, the wife had COVID last week, and
Hope she's feeling
um,
better.
she is feeling fine now, and I was lucky and didn't get anything. So, I mean, obviously, I'm the only one that matters. So I'm
Correct.
good.
Yes, yes, yes.
I don't know how she's doing, to be honest. I haven't asked. So we we binge watched Archive 81 on Netflix, and actually, I've met a couple people. It kind of popped off. Actually, it was like very highly viewed on Netflix. I saw that online trending. We met a couple people this weekend and they had seen it, and I'm not sure if like Netflix was pushing it heavy and that's why people are watching it, or just word of mouth. But without spoiling it, because I think it's only been out for 2 weeks, it's 8 episodes, about an hour long each. Again, if someone's sick and you can't really leave the house, it's perfect to just go through. But Archive 81 is kind of a horror slash thriller, suspense. And I will say this, and fast forward 20 seconds. This isn't really a spoiler. What I'll say is I enjoyed the show immensely up till at the end of episode 7. My wife and I looked at each other and we go, I have a feeling they're not going to stick to the landing. And only because we had like been really enjoying it, but we just had this feeling that like they built this whole story up and it was almost too much. Like it was almost impossible to fulfill. So I say this with the fact that saying just still that shouldn't deter you from watching it. The
Mm-hmm.
show does a phenomenal job of creating uneasiness. This is not a horror show that is about the jump scares. It's not a horror show that's about the gore. It's a completely based in isolation. It's completely based in like this just like idea, this imagining of something coming, behind you, like that, like the hairs on your neck sticking up. And as someone who doesn't really get scared from supernatural or horror or those type of films, I definitely felt uneasy for a while. Like watching it, I felt uncomfortable. And I think the show did such a good job of that, at least early on. I'll argue they abandoned it at the end of the series. I wish they had focused more on the horror. Um, I got this recommendation from a subreddit for Haunting of Hill House, and people had
Oh,
said
okay.
like, "Hey, you should watch Archive 81." It kind of feels that vein of like, because Haunting of Hill House was a very character driven horror, right? Like it's not again about the jump scares; it's about getting to know the characters and getting depth within the story. Um, the easiest thing I'll say, and I'll wrap this up like this. I told you this earlier. Sounds really weird, but think Midsummer meets The Ring. That's what I would say
Interesting.
this show is.
Like an
So
uncomfortable type horror.
yeah, so like you have the VHS type found footage,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a cult feeling
Yeah.
of community. And you mix the two worlds, and the whole time I have commenting, I'm like, this feels like The Ring, this feels like Midsummer, like there's like at different times.
I will say
So
this:
I
the
would recommend it.
internet loves this show. It's got a 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb, which is notoriously
I
shrewd. 93% of Google users like it, and it's got an 84% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I mean this when I say I'm not trying to insult the ending. I don't think I'm the only one who feels that way. If I got on Reddit afterwards again, as I always do, and see what people are saying, it seemed like everyone enjoyed it immensely and just felt like they didn't stick the landing. Actually, to be honest, it feels like they're just building up season 2 more so to just finish the story with the bow on it, right?
Right.
Like you and I talked about that with oh my gosh, the Korean show,
Squid Game.
Squid Game. You know, they clearly are setting up season 2 and annoyed us, right? Like just
Yeah.
end it the way it should end. That's kind of how Archive 81 ends. Is like, okay, it's just building to the next season, whereas they should have just focused on finishing the story properly.
And the lead actor, the one who plays the archivist, Mamadou Athie,
Yeah,
he is in the new Jurassic World movie coming out this year.
I thought he was really good. I know you haven't seen it. I
I've
don't want
seen
to
him
say
in
too
one
much.
other thing. It was Unicorn Store that Brie Larson directed, which is a horrible movie. It's like
Oh,
my bottom 10, literally, of all time out of 11
oof.
films. But he's fine in it.
He does a good job. What I would say, he sells me in the show on just like he's there to do a job. He's fixing these. The show is about archived VHS films, or not VHS, like 8mm films or whatever, and he's that were found in a fire, and
Mhm.
he's preserving them. He's cleaning them 25 years later. He got hired for a job, and he's watching the tapes after he restores them. And obviously, they're like these home videos this girl was filming about this apartment, and so that's where the uneasiness comes from. He does a really good job of conveying that kind of creepiness.
And the isolationist element is like, from what I can remember from the trailer, he's like alone in some building doing it. Like there's no one else there, which is
Yeah,
kind of
he's
another.
hired from this random person who you don't really, he can't really, he's Googled him. It's a corporation that has like no online presence. And so they're like, hey, we'll pay you $100,000 to restore these 8 tapes. And you have to, and we'll just take you to the compound. The tapes are fragile, so we can't move them. We'll take you to this house in the Poconos, and for 2 weeks you just can't leave.
Damn.
And yeah, he's
Interesting.
all alone. Yeah, I'd recommend it, honestly.
All right. That is Archive 81. I went back and watched for, I believe, the first time, because as I was watching this, I was like, I mean, obviously I've seen parts of it, but it's not really, I don't remember the story. The movie Wild Things from 1998. This is on Netflix, starring, of course, Denise Richards, Nev Campbell, Matt Dillon, Bill Murray. There's actually quite the cast for it, for Wild Things. Now, it's like you have seen this, so let me just say,
Oh yeah,
skip. If you haven't seen Wild Things, Kevin Bacon, of course, is one of the
I mean
leading
it's
actors.
in the '90s. Like, come on.
So I'm gonna
Yeah.
spoil all of Wild Things. So skip ahead a minute, probably 2 minutes if you haven't seen it. So here's the thing with Wild Things. It is a bad movie. It has one scene that everyone basically went to the theaters to see, but it plays like a telenovela. Like it constantly tries to reinvent itself and drop like twist on twist on twist. And none of these things have any service done to them in the story. It's like, what if this guy also did it and he's alive too? And I'm like, you haven't set any of this up. You're just you're purely going for shock value with nothing behind any of this. And then when they retell everything in the end, I'm like, yeah, that still doesn't make any fucking sense. I was fine with one or two twists. By the fifth or sixth one, I was like, all right.
I was gonna say the final twist is literally like, yeah, I was gonna say is like 3 or 4. I mean, in.
There are 4 moments at least, major twists where they go back and I can show you like via flashbacks, like how events actually played out off screen to set up this twist. And those 4 moments alone, like, are just ridiculous and don't fit in the narrative at all. But there's several other like little character moments where they try and like do like a Scooby Doo, pull the mask off and reveal like, aha. So it was beyond overly ambitious, and I have to say the opening credits are the most gratuitously auteur opening credits I've ever seen.
I need to go back and watch
Like,
this.
just watch the first 2 minutes. This thing thinks it's dropping like The Godfather Part 4 on your lap.
So, okay, it has been a while since I've seen this, but I don't remember it being bad. I just remember it being like ambitious.
It's really good after the first twist. Once they then from then on, about every 15 minutes they try and drop some major revelation on you that really just doesn't have any setup, and it gets to the point where it really just collapses in on itself because it tries so hard for these whoa shit moments that the whole story just can't hold up.
How good was that one scene, though?
It was strong to quite strong.
Okay, I have a question again because I haven't seen it in forever. Does that scene feel like it was necessary? Like, did it actually push, the plot, or was it like when you're rewatching it, you're like, okay, they just wanted to have Nev Campbell and Denise Richards and Matt Dillon have a threesome?
I'd say a little bit more the latter, but their relationship being that, like being very sexually charged, is actually kind of important to the character motivations. So there's definitely way more gratuitous nudity and sex scenes in the 90s than that one. We'll put it that way.
You bring it back.
Yeah. So, and it's tied into like the first big twist in the film. So in and of itself, you're like, dude, there's no way. Are they really gonna fuck? Oh, they are. Okay, cool. Wild Things, 1998. Did not give it a good rating.
Can I ask? Did your wife watch it with you?
She did, yes.
Did she like it?
She was having fun until about the second or third major twist. Because it reminded me of like at the end of a telenovela, like someone shows up and they're like, "I'm not dead. I've been alive the whole time, and also I'm pregnant." You're like, "Well, hang on. We don't need all this." It's just really, it's really dramatic.
So Shakira Hayek was not too into it.
She was into like if we would have stopped it at like the 55-minute mark, I think she would have given it pretty high.
When does the sex scene happen?
About 40 minutes in, I'd say.
I wanted you to be like, for 33 minutes and 20.
38 minutes, 11 seconds. It runs till about 59:56. It's a minute 14, which is more than you need.
You're like, you really had that ready to go.
Lucky guess.
That movie does have, I will say, like, it's been 20 years maybe since I've seen it, but like, does have like a cult following online. And maybe,
and it's not just the mouth breathers that like want to masturbate to Denise.
Yeah, I think there's something about like maybe to your point about how hard they try to go with the plot. Like it's kind of just one of those like iconic films that people enjoy still talking about.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's an iconic in a good way. Just like it has a place in history. Like for a movie in the 90s that probably shouldn't be talked about, like I think that movie's going to be remembered for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it takes swings for the fences. It doesn't just like sit there and rely on the hotness of Denise Richards and Nev Campbell. Like it really tries to do something crazy and it blows up in its face, but I at least respect the balls that it has.
Yeah.
But Bill Murray is really good in it. He actually plays a lawyer. I don't know if you remember, the one representing Matt Dillon.
Yeah, it's been. I forgot Bill Murray was in it, to be honest with you.
And of course, he's a part of like the seventh twist at the end of it. Which,
yeah.
Whatever. Take that for what it's worth. All right, what else have you seen?
So I think I have 3 other things, but I think there are things that you have been watching too.
Okay.
So do you have anything else before we get into those?
Yeah, I do. Let me get a few of these out of the way quick. I watched Like Mike from 2002.
Jesus. Why?
I host a movie club at school, and this is what the kids want to watch.
Okay. That makes much more sense.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where it's like, did you remember Crispin Glover being in this? He like runs the orphanage.
I've seen it one time.
Yeah.
0.
And Jesse Plemons is like the bully at the orphanage. So it's a star-studded cast, and it's fun because it's like a who's who of early aughts NBA players.
Could you that movie? If you're describing it to someone today, like Lil Bow, like I mean, the whole concept of film doesn't really fit
right
today, right?
And they never really get into like why or how the shoes have magical powers. But they definitely do. Eugene Levy is in it as well. He's like the person from the front office of the Los Angeles Knights.
What happened to our? Maybe I just have been missing it. Maybe because the movies aren't made for like me anymore. But there was something about the 90s about kids being able to become professional athletes.
Yes.
Right? Like there was multiple films about kids being able to be.
And I think Like Mike coming out in 2002 was probably like the end of this trend. But if you go from like 94 up until about this movie, there's probably 7 or 8 films you can come up with that were like mainstream, where
Yeah.
kids play or are somehow involved in professional sports.
Yeah.
And I think when our generation kind of got out of the age where we were still going to see these films in theaters, the subgenre died with us.
Is it, I wonder if is it the internet just killed it? Is it, what, because that was a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
like, what kid
Yeah.
doesn't like to imagine that they'll catch a fly ball, they'll catch a home run ball, and they'll throw the ball back onto the field, and it will be such an amazing throw that they're like, we have to see this kid.
Yeah.
Like,
Then a kid goes out and actually does it at a game and fucking blows his arm out, and then he can't pitch
yeah.
in high school, and his dad leaves, and
I
it's
mean,
whole.
I understand as a kid, like, you would eat that shit up, but like, have kids changed that much? Is it us who have changed, or just like
Probably a
kids
little bit of both.
too? Yeah.
A little bit of both, sadly. But like Mike, I will say it's fun in the basketball moments, but everything else, as an adult, I just can't watch it really. Um, and Bow Wow's like, I will say this: while he's not a great actor, he has charisma and screen presence. Like he he's himself, which he has like a definitive thing that he brings to the movie, which is fun. But again, like Mike, it's not a good movie, and it's semi-entertaining in the basketball parts. But like everything, they try and put some, emotional through line in there as well that just feels out of place and forced from the studio, and it kind of doesn't work.
Did you like it when you were a kid? Do you remember?
This was actually not one that I was like too crazy about. And again, in 2002, we were early in high school, so it's like
yeah, at that point, yeah, it was probably a little past our time.
it was. But if this would have come out when I was 7 or 8, I can almost guarantee you I would have rented it like once every other month from Blockbuster.
Your dad was like, please stop.
Please quit. I'll mention this one really quick. So the movie Sudden Death from 1995 with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh, yeah.
I texted the group about this. So when this episode drops, you'll actually be able to go check out our movie commentary that myself, Nate Thurman, and Brian Banner did on this film, which I believe dropped the week before.
I'm embarrassed that I picked U.S. Soccer over this.
It's okay. You have your you had your commitment. We understand. All you need to know about this film is there is a scene in it where Jean-Claude Van Damme beats up the Pittsburgh Penguins mascot.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and the trust me, I'm underselling it because I sent you guys the video of it, and it's pretty fucking ridiculous. Basically, my 20-second elevator pitch: Jean-Claude Van Damme is I don't want to say retired because he's still in the prime of his life, but a former firefighter who's now the fire marshal at the arena where the Game 7 of the Stanley Cup playoffs is happening, and terrorists take over the arena, and Jean-Claude Van Damme needs to fight his way through the caverns of the arena during the Game 7 of the hockey game of the Stanley Cup to get back his daughter.
This is Michael Scott's movie.
Basically, yeah. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, it kind of is. And then one last thing I'll mention briefly before we get into our stuff together. I was kind of on a Jean-Claude Van Damme kick. I was like, how low can you go?
That's
and
really
I watched
sad.
Street Fighter, which came out the year before. And my Letterboxd review, it's not unique to lambaste and bash this movie. Like, it's sort of notoriously bad. But really, there's like no fighting until the last 20 minutes. And I actually had some fun with the last 20 minutes of it. But it is one of the most horribly acted, and I got to say, some of the worst set design I've ever seen in my life. Like,
That's saying something. We've seen some bad movies.
You should just spot check it, meaning like randomly go to some scenes of it, because this thing looks horrible. Like, the repertory theater that we had at our high school would put the set design of this to shame. Like, it's really bad. And Jean-Claude Van Damme notoriously was like high out of his mind on cocaine during the filming of this. And his character, and I'm not meaning to make fun of him with English being his second language, but he has some like interesting one-liners where he puts the emphasis on the wrong word.
Now I kind of want to watch this.
Like, one example is so the villain in the movie, M. Bison, who's like the general guy who like levitates and stuff. He has like 60 hostages that Guile, who's Jean-Claude Van Damme, is coming to free. And his line, I believe, is, "I'm going to free these hostages from this base." And he delivers the line, "I'm going to free these hostages from this base." And it's
Wait,
like,
there are other hostages
I was
at
going to
other
say,
bases.
is there another set of hostages at a different base that?
Yeah, but I'm not going to rescue those hostages.
Right.
This base.
But he makes this declarative statement. I remember watching it like, I actually remember thinking, I wasn't trying to make fun of him. I was like, is there another base?
Like, they're setting up the sequel.
From this base. Like, the ones at the other base, fuck them. They are dead.
I don't know if I myself. I love bad movies, as people have heard me on this pod before. I don't know if I could dedicate hours.
Yeah, I watched it in like two sittings, and this is one that I think would be a great commentary if we had like 3 or 4 people. But I mean, I can't imagine the instant, like, your wife wouldn't let you watch this. I had to watch this on my own, obviously. So you're gonna have to like.
I would have to be like, you're in class for the next 2 hours. Like,
Sometimes my wife will even be like trying to read next to me, and like she'll catch a glimpse of what I'm watching, and she goes, "What the fuck is this?"
that's what I feel most judged. Like, what is wrong with you?
So much.
Why would you do this to yourself? Like, I don't know. I hate myself.
All right, I got a few more things, but I know we share some of them cyclically, so I'll turn the ball over.
Yeah. Well, do you want to start with Pam and Tommy?
Let's do it. So as this episode drops, we will be probably at least 1, maybe 2 episodes behind. So we've seen episodes 1 through 3 of the Hulu original series. What do you think so far?
Yeah, so, for those of you who don't know, the show is about the most famous sex tape getting released, for Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee, who is the drummer of Motley Crue. And as you and I were in the generation, we were just old enough, you and I were probably like, 8, 9 years old, to be aware, not that we knew it was on the tape or anything, but to be aware that like this was a story. I remember like Jay Leno. I remember watching, like, I just remember it being such a topic. It kind of felt the same way with like the OJ stuff. Like, this feels like it's trying to be like American Crime Story, right? Like that the OJ AMC did with OJ and Versace and Monica Lewinsky.
Right.
And so they're trying to like do this like true crime thing, and it is funny rewatching that kind of stuff for people who are our age. It's I didn't know, like, this is pretty accurate. So I read about the show itself. Like, the show is actually very accurate on what seems to have actually went down. Like, Seth Rogen's character stealing the safe and things like that. Like, how or Tommy Lee holding him at gunpoint. These were all very real things. I will say the show has been entertaining. I think Lily James has been fantastic.
Oh my God, she's awesome.
Yeah, I think Seth Rogen and Nick Offerman. I'm not exactly sure how they got involved in this, but it's good to see that. I mean, he's doing great. They're both doing good. I knew that originally that Tommy Lee was going to be played by. Why am I forgetting his name? What is wrong with my brain right now?
Right now it's Sebastian Stan, who of course I love.
But it was originally going to be oh my gosh, Pineapple Express, and the interview. James Franco.
What?
James Franco was originally going to be Tommy Lee in this. He was involved in the project, which is I think how Seth Rogen got involved.
Right.
And then James Franco had
got canceled basically. Yeah.
Got canceled. Yeah. And so, they moved on from him. So that kind of like made me realize, like, okay, that's where Seth Rogen came in on this. So from my perspective, I've been enjoying it. I think it's highly entertaining. There's a scene halfway through episode 2, and you'll know it when you see it because it's impossible not to.
Yep.
That you'll be like, what the fuck is happening right now? Turns out that's based on an autobiography moment for Tommy Lee.
I wonder if they're going to bring that back as well. Like, I
feel like they will.
Yeah.
There's no way you will. If you're like, what are you talking about? And you've seen the second episode, like, go back. You clearly missed a scene. Yeah. So I'll let you talk here in a second. Like, my last thought about it is, I don't know where the crescendo is.
Yeah.
Right? Like where I understand, I know where they're going with it, right? Like they're going to release the tape. It is fun probably for the Gen Xers listening to this who didn't understand the start of the internet. This is so good for you to watch, right? Like,
Yeah, that
you
might
don't
be even
understand.
like just as interesting part of the story. Because this was essentially like the way that the average person figured out to monetize the World Wide Web.
Yeah, like what you and I remember the internet in the '90s and how terrible it was,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I mean, I think people who who are in their teenage years or early 20s right now, they don't understand what it really was in the '90s. And so that to me has been the most fun part of the show to watch, like the nostalgia, being like, I remember, like this is before Google. Like he was like literally talking about like, oh, search engines, and he doesn't, he says
Alta Vista.
Alta Vista, and I was like, holy
I thought they
shit,
were going to
Google isn't.
reference Ask Jeeves in that moment.
I thought they were gonna do Ask Jeeves too, which I would have loved. But so I think for me is like it would be fun to watch the show from that perspective. So my point is the crescendo is obviously they're gonna release the tape, it's gonna make money, but he's gonna lose out on it. Like I just don't, with OJ trial or all these other true crime, like you have this peak. I don't know what the peak is gonna be. So I'm enjoying it, I'm entertained. I'm not sure exactly how I'm gonna feel at the end of it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't even really thought about that. And I think part of the thing that has me interested in the show so far is the lens that it's telling the story through doesn't really seem to be, maybe bias is the wrong word, but it's not telling the narrative from with a certain agenda, meaning like there are times that it makes Tommy Lee look like a huge asshole, and there are times that it really humanizes him. And I know he was far from a good person in real life, or at least, there's been a lot of stories about his behavior, and especially towards Pamela Anderson and things like that. But it doesn't seem like it's necessarily like a hit piece on him, but it also doesn't like it's it's playing them as just sort of like straightforward. Like they're not necessarily victims really at this point, but they're definitely not. What's the word I'm trying to use? Because saying that they're the antagonists, I think, would be wrong to say
Yeah,
as
there's
well.
no antagonist, right? Like, I mean, I guess technically,
But it's even
Seth
played
Rogen.
Seth Rogen's character, who's the one who takes the tape in both lights. Like,
Right, like you're like feel bad for him. Like
yeah, in the first episode, you're like, "Fuck, dude, do this to them." And then in the second and third episode, you're a little bit more like, "Okay, this guy's like not like a flawless person. He's kind of down on his luck, but he's kind of a shithead too."
Robin Sparkles thinks they're almost like making Pamela Anderson too innocent in the show.
I
At
agree.
least so
Yeah,
far.
right. I agree. So yeah, because like some of the stuff with her like on set in Baywatch, like man, they're really playing the martyr with her, probably more than anybody. Um, but I'm with you. Like the interesting parts of this story, maybe it's 75% like the way that this sort of started the perverse use of the internet when it became like more pervasive, like more mainstream, and then a little bit like just how crazy Pam and Tommy were as a couple. But yeah, they're like crescendo or their story arc, like where do you go after the tape drops? Like it sucks. Maybe they sue these guys, but like how interesting is that really?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like I mean that does happen in real life. Like, do I need to see that? Like I don't know, like again, this is Hulu's answer to trying to get some, you know, original TV. Again, doing the true crime or however you want to interpret what this is. But to me, I've been actually more fascinated by like the nostalgia of the '90s and what
Yeah.
was like the Seth Rogen's character being like the World Wide Web, and they're like, "What's that?" Like that's really how it happened. Like that's really not just with this story. Like in general, the World Wide Web, like it was such a brand new thing. It freaked everyone out. It's like it's hard to say to someone who has grown up with a phone or an iPad, and it makes us sound like boomers, like really
Well,
old
it's
people.
really
We're
interesting.
not. We're like, but
It's really interesting how it was one of those things that like a lot of people didn't even like monetarily or just mentally invest in because they thought it was just going to be a fad that died out.
yeah,
Like
I
Nick
mean that was a
Offerman's
real thing.
character's like, no, I don't know what that is. Like everyone didn't
There
say.
were
Everyone wasn't just like get on board because this is the next wave. Some people were like, I'm not going to fucking do the internet.
there were articles in like New York Times and major newspapers that were like the internet fad, or saying like like it will die out. Like people being like, yeah, it's not going to last long. And that's why I think you and I like grew up in a specific generation where we had the understanding of like, living on landlines
Yeah.
and getting to experience
Yelling
the
at your
internet
mom like,
immediately.
I hope no one is expect. You had sisters too, so they would have been like maybe expecting a phone call, and you're like, no, I need to download this photo from Kazaa.
It would
Have
take
to
8 years, and then they would pick up the phone. So if you're listening, you don't understand. When you had like AOL 4.0 or whatever dial up, if someone picked up the landline, it disconnected you from the internet.
Oh, I didn't know
And so
that.
when you had siblings, they would do that to you on purpose to fuck with you. You'd be on the internet IMing the girl you had a crush on or whatever, and they would just open the phone, turn on the phone, and then automatically you lost your connection. Like, you
God.
can't understand what that was like.
Remember the rich people that had two phone lines?
God, yeah,
Not us.
the girls and not us. Like I remember asking my dad for a second phone line once, and he was like, "No."
Our face, yeah. So I guess what I'll say my last thoughts on Pam and Tommy are I'm interested in the show. I think the acting performances are like Sebastian Stan, it's very like his vocal cadence is kind of starting to annoy me, but they're at least interesting characters that like I see no reason why this won't be a show that I watch each episode every week, probably like the day or two after it comes out. Like I'm that interested in it.
Yeah, same. I think the funniest commentary, and I don't know if it is funny, but like to me is like the ironic part is this is a show about an invasion of privacy, about probably the greatest invasion of privacy
Mhm.
of a modern generation. Because like you can argue the Paris Hilton and the Kim Kardashian ones,
But those were purposely leaked, we
those
think,
were
right?
almost intentful, right?
Yeah.
Like, and those were sex tapes. Like, let's be honest, those were sex tapes. Whereas this one is like if you actually look up the tape, it's an hour-long tape of
Oh yeah,
very
it's like their
personal,
vacation. Yeah.
yeah, of like personal. It's not like sex is like 8 minutes of it. I was reading an article like sex is 8 minutes of an hour long of personal, like they didn't know back then. There was no imagination that something like this would get out, right?
Yeah.
Like Kim Kardashian and Paris Hilton's ones are a little different. Not saying that they might have not been victims, but to me, the show now isn't it about invasion of privacy. But I don't know if you know this, but Pamela Anderson didn't give permission for the show. And
Hmm.
recently this week has deleted all of her social media.
Wow.
And so it's kind of now I feel like you kind of feel weird about it being like this is a show about an invasion of privacy. Now invading privacy. It's kind of
Yeah. I don't know. Now I don't
what's
know
our
how
role in society.
I'm gonna have to do a little more research on like her and Tommy Lee's reactions to the show.
Yeah, I care more about her than Tommy Lee, I think.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah.
can too. He'll probably just be like, "Fuck you guys."
He's like, I got a big dick that talks.
Yeah, we know Tommy. That's okay, that's in it. All right, fine then. You can do it. All right, do you have anything else?
I mean, next one we shared Murderville. What you can
Oh
go ahead.
yeah. Okay, I forgot about Murderville. I have a Power Rangers episode that I watched that I want to talk about briefly.
Yes.
So as you know, I'm
yes.
going through Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. We'll see how far.
As long as you promise to watch the Green Ranger miniseries with me.
Of course, yeah. That's several episodes away from where I'm at cycling. Because the last episode I watched was season 1, episode 4, titled "A Pressing Engagement." The plot synopsis is at the youth center, Jason attempts to break Bulk's bench pressing record, only to be severely distracted. So the episode opens with Jason about to break the Angel Grove Gym and Juice Bar record by bench pressing 200 pounds. And cycling, the record is 1,010 consecutive reps.
What?
Like it opens and Ernie is counting for Jason and like 1,008.
Okay, I feel like I rewatched these like years ago, and I don't even remember this. This is like so extreme.
And I'm like, guys, even as a kid, you'd be like, what the fuck? There's no goddamn way. And Bulk, I get he's fat, but like he holds the record.
1,000 times.
So what happens is Ernie, who's supposed to be spotting and counting for Jason, he's eating a sandwich while he's doing all this. And of course, he loses track of how many
No, I
Jasons
want to watch this.
So Jason kind of fucks up and he loses. They can't count the record at this point. Now Rita, being the voyeur that she is, Rita Repulsa, is watching all of this. And When Ernie fails to keep track of Jason's reps, again, because of eating this Subway sandwich, Rita says, and I quote, "Jason's not so tough when he's on his own," end quote. What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this causes her to hatch a plan to separate Jason from his friends by sending down this Sphinx-looking guy, which this is one of those monsters I vividly remember from the show. I don't know if you do. He's like a blue and yellow Sphinx. Another random scene in the episode that I just wrote down, Alpha 5 is shown at the base with Zordon, and without any context, he is holding a teddy bear. I don't know
Of course.
I don't know what that had to do with anything.
So was this like, correct me if I'm wrong, was this Japanese, was this like a Japanese scene? And, because that's how the show saved money, right? Like they just took half the show from the Japanese and
very possible.
Yeah, I just wonder if that was like in their episode and they just were like, we're just not going to explain it.
It could have been like a teddy bear subplot that they left on the cutting room floor.
I need to know that.
Of significance, though, this is the episode where the Rangers get their power crystals, which allow them to like supercharge their weapons. And the power crystals, when they like pull them out, they really just look like Jello shots, is what I wrote. like
I kind of want one.
Middle of this battle, Jello shots, and they're like, all right, fuck yeah. And then the last thing I wrote down, so Ernie tries to make, at the end of the episode, of course, Jason, spoiler alert, sets the bench press record for Angel Grove Gym and Juice Bar. And Ernie, who's the big fat guy who works at the Gym and Juice Bar, tries to congratulate Jason on breaking the record by getting him a cake. Hilarity ensues, though, cyclically, because the cake he pulls out says, "Happy birthday, Mom." To which everyone says, "Ernie," and he goes, "What did you expect for the last minute? It was the only cake they had." And Bulk falls into the cake.
No, Bulk, come on. They all go, "Ernie."
And no, literally, and then I'm not kidding you, then there's a freeze frame and the credits roll. And again, I'm saying this in jest, people at home. Like, I don't actually expect this show to be, like, good, even though it's entertaining as fuck. But every cake that I've ever bought, like, when you buy the cake, they're like, "Hey, do you want us to write anything on it?" There's not a cake left that already says "Happy Birthday, Mom" that you like have to buy.
No, I have no choice. So you know this. I worked at an ice cream store for 4.5 years, from ninth grade to graduating high school. I remember people come. We had like blank cakes, and then you would write on it when they bought it.
Correct.
I would tell people, they'd be like, "Hey, can I get Happy Birthday written on the cake?" And I'm like, "You don't want me writing on your cake." They never trained me in all those years at TCBY to write on a cake.
It's not easy either, I don't think.
No, it's terrible. It was not easy. I tried, and people would be like, "I don't want that anymore. That looks terrible."
Yeah, another cake ruined. Like, we're fucked.
Yes. And so I would tell people, like, "You don't want me to do it." One time, I will never forget, this woman was like, "Can I do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Have at it." And I'll never forget, a customer literally wrote, like,
she had to buy the cake, though, right? Like,
she bought the cake, but she literally wrote the "Happy Birthday," Sarah or whatever it was. Like, I'm like, this is probably, you could have trained me for this. But yeah.
She must have really needed that shit on the cake.
Yeah, I just remember people looking at me like I was crazy. I was like, "You don't want me to do this. Trust me."
So I'll keep you updated. I'll try to watch a Power Ranger episode every week. They're like 18 minutes, so.
Oh, yeah. I love the Japanese start of it. Like, you didn't know that as a kid. I'm like, but you go back and watch it, like, it's so obvious.
Dude, it's like nostalgia porn for me. And like that, I don't care what anyone says, the Power Ranger theme song goes, it didn't have to go that hard for us, but it did.
Yeah. Dude, my 7th or like 9th birthdays, every gift I got was Power Rangers related.
Oh, that's fucking awesome. I think the Red Ranger at least 2 straight Halloweens. And the first bike that I got was the Power Rangers Power Cycle.
Oh, dude, nice.
Yeah.
My 8th birthday party was the movie.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have a summer birthday. That would have made total sense. Damn, that's awesome. All right, Murderville. Psycho, I'll let you take this one away.
Yeah, Murderville, again, watched it this weekend. Kind of interchanged with Pam and Tommy just because they're very, like you taking breaks from a serious show. Yeah. And so, like, Netflix just, you put on Netflix and they're immediately, advertising a new show. And Will Arnett, who, I always love Will Arnett from Arrested Development, but I also think Will Arnett can be, I don't know, he's always in things that you're like, is he just desperate? And so I always am like a little worried when I see it. So what caught me though was the concept. And you and I talked about this. Murderville is a concept where it's a murder mystery, and he is scripted. Well, Arnett's character, but there's a random celebrity every episode who has no idea what's going on, and they're basically forced to improv. And the first episode is Conan O'Brien. The second episode is Marshawn Lynch, and then a couple. Those were the first two that I watched, obviously.
Yeah, those are
And
the only two I've seen so far.
so we'll just talk about those two. Um, I think the concept's hilarious. I really do. I think the idea that forcing a celebrity to improv while everyone else is in on the joke is pretty unique. But the problem is it doesn't mean it's going to work, right? Like, just because the concept is funny doesn't mean the actor themselves is going to be able to fulfill what they're doing. The great thing about the first two episodes is we have Conan O'Brien, who obviously is an iconic comedian and writer, and then you have Marshawn Lynch, who's almost the other end of the spectrum, where he's just like genuinely funny without meaning to. And I think those episodes work. They work really well. They're 30-minute episodes of like the stupidest concept that they're solving a fake crime. And it's just fun, like, especially if you want a palate cleanser and you're switching around from like something serious. I'll say this really quickly. I did watch the next two episodes. I won't get into it, but it shows how the show is very carried from who the actor is going to be or the actress is going to be. Because if the actor or actress is not bought in on the improv, it doesn't sell at all.
Yeah.
And it can fall really fast. So I think Conan O'Brien and Marshawn Lynch, I would absolutely recommend watching that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a cool, like, sort of experiment. And I do I like improv a lot. And I think this is sort of putting people that we typically don't see in these situations. In the case of like Marshawn Lynch, like, it's a sink or swim type format. Now, obviously, they're setting them up for success. They're not trying to embarrass them, but they have varying levels of comfortability and success with the sort of the premise. And I'm with you. I think it's equal parts like the celebrities that, and the two I've seen, I think, based on what you've said, are probably the best two versions of the show. And it really just depends on buy-in. Like, some of the people don't seem either not to know exactly what the premise of the show is, or to just not be as bought in as others. Because I will say Marshawn, and again, they can edit it to make it probably look a lot of different ways, but the dude was there saying, I'm going to have the time of my life and no one's going to stop me. And he was all in. And Conan, with a different approach to it, of course, but he said, like, it's basically like, what's the rule of improv? Like, you never say no to anything.
Yeah.
That's what Conan's philosophy was. He's like, I don't care what, like, when they send the little girl up to him and he has to explain death to this little girl, that like how adults get murdered. So,
I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. Sorry.
I was gonna say, it's a cool concept, and I'll probably finish the season just sort of out of curiosity. But I think I caught the highlights. I don't know if I need a season 2, but it would solely be predicated on who the guests were. And you know what? If you want to swap out Will Arnett for somebody else, I'd be game for that too. I do enjoy him in this role, but I think if this is going to work as a multiple season thing, which I guarantee you Netflix has designs for, you're going to have to mix up all the players on the chessboard, I think.
I mean, it can't be other than like paying the character. Like, this is one day for this actor, right? Like, this is not a multi-day shoot. This is probably pretty cheap relatively for Netflix. I think I agree with you. It can easily continue. I think what they need to learn from season 1 is getting actors who are, have some ability in the improv role.
Yeah.
And not saying that these actors and the other ones aren't capable. So like Kumail Nanjiani, who's in the third one, like, I think the guy's funny. I mean, I don't necessarily have anything against him. I've always enjoyed him for the most part. But it almost felt like he's just kind of, it was like his agent told him to show up. And so Conan O'Brien, immediately sees what's happening. Like, in the show, he's like, oh, they're making me be a detective. I'm going to just have to improv everything. Camille is like, what is happening the whole time? Like he's like,
Yeah.
why? And it's just like, again, there's some funny parts, but Will Arnett's really trying to serve, their
He's
situation
John
on a
Stockton,
platter.
basically.
Yeah, like please take the pass. So I've enjoyed it. I will say that, but I will tell you, my wife, after watching the next two, like the two after Marshawn Lynch, was like, "I'm good. I'm done."
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of more. If you said I had to watch one more, I might be more interested in the Sharon Stone one, which is I think episode 6, the last one.
Yeah, I need to watch that one.
Yeah, but I'll get through it. It'll probably just the sense of urgency I have for the last 4 are nowhere near the first 2.
But that's the thing about this show. Like, it shouldn't be something like you feel like you're obligated to watch. It's a perfect like, hey, I don't know what to watch right now, or we just watch something serious. Like, hey, let's go. Like put something on in the background while we're cooking dinner, or like you know doing something else. Like, I think it's perfect for that. Like, not something you have to plan on. Like, hey, let's watch the next episode of Murderville.
Right. um. So yeah, I'll finish the show. I would recommend the first 2, but again, like you said, it's one of those weird shows where it's like every episode, it's like you can't recommend the series because it's like every episode is so different in terms of entertainment. All right, I had one last thing before we finish out the show. I watched on Peacock the first season of a show called One of Us is Lying. Have you heard of this show?
No, but that sounds awesome.
So this is a delicious, I know you love these, whodunit. So the premise, cyclically, this is based on a book series. It's 8 episodes, about 40 minutes each. There is a high school where a student named Simon has an app. Everyone knows it's him, and he releases a lot of juicy gossip about people at the school on this app. And one day, Simon goes to detention with 5 other students. And so, this is all in the first 20 minutes of the show, so it's not spoilers, and it's in the trailer. And Simon is poisoned and dies in detention. And the other 7.5 episodes are figuring out who in detention, or maybe even at the school, had the motive and the ability to kill Simon. So it plays out with a little bit of teen drama, a lot of.
Is it a comedy, or is it like taken
No,
seriously?
It's a drama. Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious if it was like serious.
Yeah, called One of Us is Lying, and we binged through it in probably like a week. Every episode ends on a cliffhanger, which is great. And the season ends, it wraps up pretty well, but they also are getting a season 2, but you feel satisfied with the conclusion. It's based on a book series, so
yeah, I just saw that. I'm looking it up as a book. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's 2 books, I think. So I think season 1 is the first book, season 2 is the second. And I'll just say this: the acting is actually better than you'd think. The teen drama part, I don't mind. I actually find it kind of fun, and I think you and the wife will actually get really into this.
I'm looking at it right now.
So whenever you watch the pilot, let me know your thoughts, because we plowed through it pretty quickly just because it was so entertaining.
I'm going to say this. I didn't expect it. We get it for free, so I don't complain, and I'm a big soccer fan. Peacock is not too bad. Like, I honestly never thought Peacock was going to happen. It was like the whole Regina George, like, stop trying to make Peacock happen. It's not going to happen.
I totally agree.
Actually, like, I'm upset with how much I actually like Peacock.
I would put Peacock way ahead of Paramount Plus and Apple TV.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, Apple is only because of Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso, right. I agree. Yeah, Peacock is climbing the charts quick. I mean, I haven't watched too much of it, but it also has the Olympics right now and the Super Bowl, because we've cut the cord. So,
yeah,
it's climbing the charts. So, One of Us is Lying, title of the show.
I might check this out. And I'll throw in really quickly, because I know we've talked about it last time, but How I Met Your Father.
Oh, yeah.
We are, what, 4 episodes?
4 episodes, I believe.
5? So I didn't know this. I don't know if you know this, but we're only getting 10 episodes.
Really?
Yeah, at least for season 1.
Okay.
I mean, depending on if it gets renewed. And I don't know if they're in a situation like How I Met Your Mother where they have exit strategies. Like, if they're not getting renewed, do they have a story they're going to tell or not? What would be your guess? Will it get renewed?
I think so.
Okay.
I think
so too.
Do you think they will, like, because the ace in the hole is, when do you bring in a cast member in just a guest appearance from How I Met Your Mother?
Rumor is Allison Hannigan.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Supposedly Barney or Neil Patrick Harris said he's not against it, but he doesn't feel like the Barney character makes sense in the world that How I Met Your Father is, because in theory that would be like years after he has a daughter.
Him and
And
Robin, when did they get divorced? In the
they'd
time?
be divorced, and he'd have a daughter at this point. And so
Yeah.
theoretically, he's like, what would my character bring? He wouldn't be this, like, the whole idea is that Barney's grown up, right? Like, Barney's not.
Yeah, he
like,
doesn't have to be like out partying with them, but he can be doing something.
Yeah, but if you saw like, wouldn't it be like funny though, like for us as fans, like to them go to McLaren's bar and see Barney and they get hit on by Barney, like, right? Like, but
Yeah.
Barney, like Neil Patrick Harris's point is like that's not his character anymore. He's
Right.
grown up, and so
So
like,
what would they
get
do
a-
with
like,
Lily then, in theory?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't like. The rumor is like, obviously we've had conversations about what's happened with Jason Segel, and
We know Josh Radnor will come back.
Well, yeah, if Josh Radnor ever, gets over his self-hate. Yeah. I mean, it was nice. This sounds sad, but you and I talked about this when Bob Saget passed away last month.
Mhm.
It was like the first time we saw Josh Radnor be like nostalgic to How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, and he did write a beautiful
Yeah.
tweet about Bob Saget and their relationship.
It's like, but you're watching, like, every show now has a podcast, right? Like all the Scrubs, The Office, even Community and New Girl, so everyone's proud of like these sitcoms that they did. We're never going to get that with How I Met Your Mother because of how like Jason Segel and Josh Radnor are.
Yeah.
And so like watching How I Met Your Father, and they're like, oh, we're going to get you, like you said, a cameo. Well, the two of the biggest characters are weird. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah, like
the
Ranjit or
actors
Carl has a better chance of showing up than him.
Absolutely. I'm actually surprised we didn't get Ranjit yet.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm enjoying the show. I mean, I'm not gonna like rave about it, but I see zero reason why I won't. I mean, we watch it the night it comes out, so
Yeah.
that's
I'm
how-
having fun.
Yeah.
I will say this, like, if you're watching How I Met Your Father and you're not liking it, which I totally understand, really go back and rewatch the first season of How I Met Your Mother and take off your like nostalgia glasses.
Right.
Like, it's similar. Like, they did not like, the show was corny and awkward and the laugh track dominated, and we look back and like love the setup. But the show wasn't successful because of how it started.
I totally agree. Yeah. All right. Anything else?
No, that's it for me.
All right. That brings us to the last part of our show, our Do You Even Lift Bruh segment, where we ask you a question that we leave you with in the world of movies. And the question now, Cycly, we are continuing the trend that we started on episode 160 of counting down each of our top 100 movies of all time. So if you click the link in the description for this video, you will find the running list for all 5 of the bros on the Bro Force Squad podcast. Cycly, before we count down our list, we are at number 78 for all of the bros, which we'll update today. How would you describe these movie lists to people? Because as we always say, this is not the AFI's top 100 movies of all time, right? This is a unique movie list they're looking at.
Yeah, this is your top 100, and you don't need to reason with anyone. Like, it can be nostalgic, it can be meaningful because you watched it with your dad on a specific date or mom, like, this is your top 100. And it's something that is to you. You don't have to like defend to anyone. So like, we all might have really weird movies. You've probably already heard in our top 100 banner, especially, that we're all like, really? But you know what? It's your list, and that's what's most important.
I mean, to show you these are movies that are special to us and our own ranking of them. This list right now includes Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle.
Yeah, not the original Jumanji. I always have to emphasize that.
Correct. And it includes the Charlie Chaplin movie, The Great Dictator from 1940 from different bros. So that's where we're at right here.
Who had The Great Dictator? I think I missed that one.
That was Nate Thurman's number 79.
That makes sense. Okay, I think that's why I missed it.
Speaking of eclectic films, your number 79, Cycly, where we last left you, was the French film Amélie, which I'm very glad. Yeah, foreign film had some representation here. So we'll just do one tonight. What is your number 78th favorite movie of all time?
This is actually really convenient and funny, like how timing works out. Like you and I shared number 80, which is crazy.
That's
'Cause
nuts. Forgetting Sarah Marshall was both of our number 80 movies.
which I know it's going to happen again, but I always thought like we were going to have repetition the latter third. But my convenient timing right now is the Winter Olympics are going on. And not only are the Winter Olympics are going on, but a certain country is in a certain event for the first time in 24 years.
No way, really?
Yeah. And that country is Jamaica in bobsledding. And
That's
my number
awesome.
78 is Cool Runnings. And
your list would not be complete without Cool Runnings.
No, obviously it's in my top 100. I rewatched this over Christmas and it solidified. Actually, it made its way up. It was originally 83, I think, or 84.
There you go.
In my list, and watched it over Christmas, and I was like, no, this movie's got to go up. Like,
you felt the rhythm.
I felt the rhyme. Like, the movie is just so good in every sense of the word. I mean, the acting, the comedy, the timing, like everything about the film. It's feel. I don't know what the movie needs to do more, to be honest, that it doesn't. Right? Like it might be one of Disney's best movies. That non-animated movies in the 90s, in my opinion. The movie itself, like obviously, when you take away the true story or whatever you want to do, like, equality and good for this like Black nation doing a predominantly white event in ice and snow. But the characters and Senka's the friendships that are made, like the relationships. I don't know, like the movie's more about just like, hey, here's a cool underdog story. The movie is really heartwarming. Like,
oh yeah,
there's no way you can watch this film and not quote it repeatedly and not smile the whole time. Like the whole mirror scene when he's like, look in the mirror and tell me what you see. I feel pride. I see power.
I see pride.
I see a badass mother who don't need that shit from nobody. I mean, the film is iconic in terms of these one-liners. Like, it's repeated. And God, even talking about it and rewatching, I'm like, 78 feels low. But the movie is perfect. It really is.
And I kind of think the team is sort of like us on the podcast. Like, obviously, Banner is Sanka. I guess you or I would be Doris. I mean, Geiger's definitely Yul Brynner.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Like pissed off.
Just like fucking fighting everybody.
You can draw a line down your head and it looks like a butt.
Yeah. And yeah, John Candy just is just so perfect in this.
Fucking
and
saint, man. John Candy's an icon.
He really is. There was just so much about this movie that I enjoyed as a kid. It was a sport that we didn't know much about. It made it more accessible. And I mean, there's really not a knock you can have on it.
No, I just go back and watch Senka's scenes like in Jamaica when he's doing like the igloo scene, like when he's trying to be convinced to join his friend. Like, I mean, how can you not just be? You don't. What more do you need from a movie? That Cool Running. What does Cool Runnings not provide? And if you haven't seen it, let's say you're a little younger than we are in our generation, because we were probably like 6-7 years old when this came out.
Mm-hmm.
That not only was this movie like me, you watch movies when you're a kid and like they're important to you. This movie holds up. This movie is just as good today to someone who's watching it for the first time, right? Like it wouldn't be like watching Mighty Ducks or like it's very specific to that generation or something like that. Like Cool Runnings is just as good now.
Yeah. And you, Banner, and myself did a movie commentary on this.
Mm-hmm.
Go back and check it out. Watch the film with us. Feel the rhythm.
So I don't know if you know this. I play curling, and
I do know this.
Yeah, and so when I shoot off, I actually do this is not a joke.
Fines.
I do feel the rhythm, feel the rhyme, get on up. It's curling time. I'm not joking. This is true.
That's awesome.
I do 4, and I push off and to shoot the stone. And I say that in my head every single time.
I love that. Does it work?
Sometimes it can be very good or bad.
I'll take
It's
some.
curling, you know.
I don't have my full list pulled up, so I'm not sure if Cool Runnings pops up on mine. It might though.
It has to be at least in your top like 200, I imagine, right?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I can double check later. Good inclusion. Cool Runnings at 78. My number 78 is the 2014 movie The Judge, starring Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
as lawyer Hank Palmer and his father Robert Duvall as Joseph Palmer. Have you seen The Judge?
I have. I
Yeah.
actually watched it in law school.
Oh,
Or
good.
not like in law school, but like when I was in law school.
So aside from, I just love seeing Robert Downey Jr. use his charisma outside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, obviously, I love the MCU, but I don't feel like since the Down Assance, when he's come back into Hollywood, we've gotten enough of him in like other roles than Tony Stark, and he is just so charismatic that he's great. There's a lot of themes in this that are very interesting to me, like legacy and familial relationships, and like getting out of the shadow of your father, and like how the family dynamic changes as you age and grow up, and think what you should let go of and what you should hold on to. And I think The Judge just sort of does all of it perfectly. And then I also just think like a well put together legal procedural is always a great framing device for a movie as well. But the concept that Robert Downey Jr. comes back to defend his estranged father, who's this sort of famous small town judge, because he's been convicted of manslaughter, and Downey's dealing with his relationship with his dad versus like, do I actually think my dad maybe did this? And then also his relationship with his old high school sweetheart and his brothers, who obviously played by Vincent D'Onofrio and who's the guy from Billions, Jeremy Strong, who have like a whole bunch of baggage going on with them. There's a lot going on, and it all works, and it feels very earnest and well acted, and there's at least something in here that I think everyone who's ever gone back home after being gone for a long time, like, you change, but sometimes you feel like the place you come back to doesn't, and that dynamic is always interesting to me. And so that's why The Judge is one that has just stuck with me after all these years. It's just an awesome fucking movie.
When did you see this? Did you see it when it came out?
Yeah, I saw when it came out. I don't know if I saw it in theaters, but it was in like the year that it came out that I saw it.
Because I'm honestly trying to remember it, and I don't think I've seen it again since I saw it. And now
It's weird because the trailer, I think, highlights a lot of Billy Bob Thornton as he's the prosecution in the movie, and he kind of has a tumult or a bit of a conflict as well, because Judge Joseph Palmer, played by Robert Duvall, is sort of like his idol, and now he has to basically try and convict him of manslaughter.
Yeah.
Well. But it's really Downey's movie, and him and Robert Duvall's relationship is sort of the centerpiece of it.
Which is, I mean, again, I'll give a little color to this. It's very, I mean, I'm not a litigator, but it is funny to say, like, lawyers are notorious for what happens in the courtroom. Lawyers will go get a drink afterwards. Dude.
Yeah, and I don't know how you guys
like,
do that, because some of the stuff said in there is like pretty scathing at times.
It's I mean, it can be, but like, again, like, it's a job, right? Like, you understand you're on the clock. Like, it's like seeing two athletes who are just go hard in the court and then, go party together, kind of thing. Like, it is, again, I don't have to live this life, and I love that I don't live this life, but that is very real. Like, to be like, I always think about A Few Good Men, like Kevin Bacon and Tom Cruise, like getting drinks at the bar, like when they're going through their case against each other. So like, I remember that in The Judge a little bit. I need to go back and watch it, but like, that is a real thing I would tell to people like who watch these like lawyer, like legal movies. When you see these like characters like interact, that's not fake. That is something that comes from a real place.
Yeah. And this is one I made myself a promise that my top movies of all time, basically I have every movie I've ever seen ranked in a
which is insane, by the way.
Yeah, it took a long time to do it, but it's a fun exercise, man. Anybody out there that hasn't done it, please do it. Just for yourself, if nothing else. But I told myself I wouldn't move films up or down the list until I rewatched them. And this is one where I'm pretty confident. Again, I don't know how far it would move up, but it could have a cool runnings effect like you. Like if I went back and rewatched this, I think it would move up a few slots just because every time I think about it again, I'm like, damn, I fucking love that movie.
You remember the last time you saw it?
It was probably like 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to go back.
Yeah, I think I might want to watch it like this year. I'm kind of getting jonesing for it now. But The Judge, 2014, starring. This would have been right after, or right the same year Age of Ultron came out. So like early part of Downey's like owning the MCU. He'd probably done 3 Marvel movies at this point.
That was my least favorite of the Avengers.
Yes, I think you are not alone in thinking that. All right, Cycly, anything else before we let the people go for episode 174?
Yeah, I've said this before. If you're driving in the left lane, guys, on the highway, that's the fast lane. If someone's passing you on the right lane, get the fuck over. Do not be just driving in the left lane in general, only to pass and going quick.
And can I say another thing kind of related to that? Last night, I had a serious issue. If you're merging onto the highway, you have to fucking pick up speed, dude.
Oh, my God.
I had people getting on at like 30 miles an hour.
No.
I'm like,
you're getting on at the speed of the highway. Like, that's what the entrance lane is for.
Like, why do I have to adjust to you? I shouldn't.
No,
fuck
God.
off. I'll say,
Drives me crazy.
Please make smart decisions when getting your hair cut. Again, it's not permanent, but it's going to last for, 3 to 5 weeks. And depending most time when you get your hair cut, you usually have something going on in at least the short term that you're like, all right, I need to look somewhat decent for. That's usually what motivates me to get out to the barbershop. Just remember, don't do anything crazy. We don't need any hair dyes or like a hairstyle. That's not the time to try something new.
Look, I went through this. I told you this, and everyone can see. You can see me, but no one can see me. My most recent haircut, it was a new guy. Put my fucking part like almost in the middle of my hair. So I had to grow the left part of my part back out. And I was like, what the fuck, dude?
Like what am I, Sean Hunter? I want it right down the middle.
Like, what is this? Like, you're seeing it. No one else is. But imagine having a crew cut like halfway through your hair. Like, I was so mad.
Well, you had the part like definitively there. Like, why? Who does this guy think is changing it?
I don't know. I moved to a new city and I've tried finding a new barber and I made a mistake.
We're not
so
going
don't
back
be
to
like
that guy.
me.
Yeah. All right, for our legal counsel, Ronnie Cycly, I'm the mayor, Jeff Hornacek, and we are the Bro Force Squad podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening to us. Follow us on Twitter at Bro Force Squad. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, anywhere you subscribe to your podcast. If you type in Bro Force Squad as 3 separate words, and check out our website, broforcesquad.com. We have all of our content and our top 100 movies of all time list updated there. Till next time, we will see you in the courtroom behind Ronnie while he's litigating against Billy Bob Thornton.
What?
Oh, you didn't know about that? Next week?
Oh, God, I'm not.
Got a little fender bender at the old Target. Totally not my fault.
So, I actually...